Welcome to Native Bidaské, Native News Online's weekly spotlight on the people making news and leading change in Indian country.
I'm with Lenny Foster on the Navajo Nation at St. Michael's, Arizona. Lenny, how are you today?
I'm good, thank you.
And listen, you are a warrior, Wounded Knee warrior, veteran. And so I want to just interview you this morning and talk to you about various things. First of all, I want to talk to you about the pandemic. We're on Navajo Nation, and as you know, there were over 80,000 cases of COVID-19 and 2,000 deaths, almost 2,000 deaths at this point. And the Navajo Nation was actually the epicenter in Indian country. And how did you survive? You never had COVID, you tell me.
I've been lucky. I was able to avoid contracting that disease. I avoided crowds. I abided by their recommendations of isolation, wearing a mask, and just avoiding big crowds, washing your hands, and not going into any crowds or gatherings, staying home. It was hard. It was probably the most difficult thing to do for our people, for myself especially, because I was able to get around, travel, interact, go to powwows, go to sweat ceremonies, attend Native American church prayer services. When the pandemic happened, after I realized the seriousness of this strange disease, and then we had to abide by the recommendations of what I just said. And all of that. It was hard. It was hard for our people, Navajo people. It was probably one of the most difficult experience that our people gone through. It was a strange disease. And the Navajo name that was given was the Kusintscha, the big cough. It was like a sickness of the coughing. That's how it spread. And we didn't know that. Perhaps it was prophesized, but it was very difficult for our people to understand, to isolate, to avoid, and even isolate within families, because we come from big families, extended families, grandkids, great-grandkids, aunts and uncles, brothers and sisters, relatives, all live in close proximity and congregate. And it was recommended that type of experience be avoided. So it was very hard.
Mm-hmm. And then Lenny, you were at Wounded Knee back in 1973, and on February 27th will be the 50th anniversary. And I understand you're going to go out to Wounded Knee.
I'm planning to attend the 50th anniversary. I've been asked by some of the organizers if I'm able to attend and be one of the speakers on that experience, and I said I would. And I'm looking forward to it. I was there from the very first night, February 27, 1973, right till the stand down, which was on a Thursday, May 8, 1973. And I survived 11 firefights. That was a harrowing experience, very serious, deadly experience, because I actually witnessed shootings and killings of our people who died there, Buddy Lamont, Frank Clearwater, people like that, and others who were shot or wounded, Milo Goins, Webster Poor Bear, people like that who were shot and wounded.
Well, Lenny, tell us, because you were how old at that time? 25?
I was 25 years old.
Okay. So you knew Dennis Banks, one of the co-founders of
Yes,
American
I
Movement.
was.
You knew Clyde Belcourt.
Yes,
You
I
knew
was.
Russell Means. Tell us, and they're gone now, in all due respect. They are gone now. Tell us some of your experiences with Dennis Banks at Wounded Knee.
I knew him all well. I met him a few years before that at the Sundance in Pine Ridge, South Dakota, 1970, 1971, 1972. And I met Vernon Belcourt in Denver, Colorado. He introduced me to his brother Clyde Belcourt. And I met them at the Indian Center in Denver. I met Dennis Banks, Russell Means at the Sundance in Pine Ridge, the summer of 1970.
Mm-hmm.
So I became acquainted with them. I joined the American Indian Movement in Denver, Colorado, under the leadership of the late Vernon Belcourt. He was a very intelligent, very outgoing, personable leader. We always communicated. I enjoyed his company. He invited me to his house and extended an invitation for me to join the American Indian Movement. When I first met him, he asked me where I was from, what tribe I belonged to. I told him I was Diné, Navajo. He wanted to know what I was doing in Denver, Colorado. I told him, actually, I'm living in Fort Collins, Colorado. I'm going to Colorado State University. Oh, you're a college student? I said, yes. He said, what year are you? I said, I'm in third year of college. And, asked me how I ended up there. I said, well, I played baseball. A couple years of junior college baseball in Arizona Western. I finished my 2 years there and I transferred to Colorado State. I tried out for the baseball team in Fort Collins, CSU, and didn't make the team, but I stayed in school. I figured that I should finish what I started and get my degree because that was a request of my mother and father. My father was a Navajo USMC code talker during World War II. So he knew the value of an education. And him and my mother recommended I go to school, stay in school, and finish. So I obligated in that way to finish what I started. So when I joined the American Indian Movement, I made it my priority to finish, get my degree from CSU. But along the way, I ended up participating in the major campaigns, the Indian rights, including occupation of Alcatraz Island, 1970, the Raymond Yellow Thunder experience there in Gordon, Nebraska, in 1972, the Trail of Broken Treaties Caravan and BIA takeover in the fall of 1972, and the occupation takeover of Wounded Knee, South Dakota in 1973.
Well, Lenny, I'd like to ask you, because a lot of times in history, people just learn some of the cursory facts. Tell us, so our viewers can get a kind of behind the scenes, what it was like in a typical day while Wounded Knee was taking place during that occupation.
When we first took over and we realized how serious this occupation had become, we had a big meeting of all the young men, the warriors, and Stan Holder was the designated as a security chief, and him being a former USMC Marine Vietnam veteran, he knew the experience of combat, and he talked to all of us, and he told us that we're here for a reason. We're here to defend our Indian rights, treaty rights, and if it means dying for that, so be it. You're free to go. You can stay. I remember he pointed to the north direction and also to the south direction. You can go. No one's going to stop you. But once you leave, they're going to arrest you and they'll have you. But if you decide to stay, you're going to be part of our security force. And it dawned on me, this is very serious. Indian rights are serious business. And we stayed up most every night thinking that their government forces are going to come in and raid. So we had to be on attention and on guard in case that they decide to come in and try to overrun us. We didn't have much ammunition. I don't think we were actually prepared for that type of occupation. Many of our people were unarmed. Most of us were carrying a rifle. I myself carried an M1 carbine. M1 carbine is a 30 caliber semi-automatic that I got at a pawn shop in Denver, Colorado. And I carried that, very limited on my ammunition, so I couldn't just fire indiscriminately. And if you know about M1 carbines, they're only good for maybe 200 or 300 yards, short distance. It's not like a 30-06 or M1 Garand or M14 or a high-power rifle. So we were limited on our firepower. And the government forces, they had their M60, their M16, high-power hunting rifles. So we were matched up with against some highly trained government personnel, and of course the government forces are trained to use deadly force. And we were guided by the love of our people and defending our way of life, our treaty rights. 1973, that was just the beginning. So it was an experience for all. It was an experience that we all learned every day.
Well, how many people were on Wounded Knee during the course of the actual takeover?
I would say that the whole time that we were occupied, perhaps at one point maybe there were 2,000-3,000 people. Of course, that number dwindled after some serious firefights where people were wounded, and we all realized this is pretty serious. And the numbers went down, the food dwindled. We didn't have much food. Coffee was a delicacy.
Well, at 25 years of age, what kept you there? I mean, were there times you were tempted to get up and say, "Hey, I'm out of here. I'm done with this"? It would have been easy for you at that point, maybe get out. And I understand there were escape routes that people helped maybe at night. So you knew how to.
Well, once I joined AIM, I made a commitment to myself that I was going to stick it out for Indian rights. Indian rights was something that's in our DNA, fighting for our way of life, our culture, our beliefs, our spirituality, our ceremonial ways, and it was one place where I really experienced and learned more about the sweat lodge ceremonies, the pipe ceremonies through the Lakota spiritual leaders such as Leonard and Wallace Blackout. They were our teachers. They encouraged us to participate in the sweat lodge ceremony, which was the ancient cleansing and purification ceremonial. And that was very.
So those teachings are what kept you there at Wounded Knee.
Well, to me, it was the love of our way of life, the love of our culture and our beliefs, our spirituality. So fighting for that reminded me that our ancestors fought for the very thing that we're fighting for, our survival of our way of life.
But as somebody who was on the inside at Wounded Knee, you may not have. Did you know about what the press was saying or what people were saying? I remember Senator McGovern was he's senator from South Dakota, but he was really anti. He was anti the takeover. He was very angry about it. So.
Well, Senator McGovern and there was a couple senators who came to visit and tried to persuade us to leave. That what we were doing was wrong. We shouldn't be fighting the United States government. And of course, the media was anti-Indian. And just thinking back, for me, it was a worthy cause. It was a way of life that I had read about, that our ancestors fought. So there was a very specific reason why we were doing this. And just the times of the 20th century, the latter part, what we were doing was an extension 100 years prior to that. The actual Indian wars had been fought between the Lakotas and Yale's cavalry, Geronimo and our Apaches and the Navajo people on the Long Walk. These are still very ingrained in all of us. There was a feeling that our ancestors back home, my grandparents, they had expressed in the past that we shouldn't forget these ways. We shouldn't forget our ceremonies, our prayers, our songs. So it was something that was still very much alive.
Did you feel like you were making history? Did you realize the historic moment that was taking place?
I realized, yes, that we were making history. Just the fact that we were there at the same place, Wounded Knee, South Dakota, what had occurred in 1890. I knew that this is what they had done to the Lakota people, and there was a history for many of us. And yeah, it was a historic. I realized the historical significance of Wounded Knee, 1973, and I felt a real honor to be part of that. And it was for me, it was a badge of honor to be part of that historic effort to be part of the repeat of the fighting. And the American Indian movement seemed to have picked up that banner, and we had historic figures as leaders: Dennis Banks, Russell Means, Crow Dog, Blackout, Carter Camp, the Belcourts, all these people, Pedro Bisnet. And these are all people who today are historic figures, but at that moment, it was just they were common men, common human beings standing up for Indian rights.
Now I understand you helped Dennis escape, or when you guys knew you were gonna surrender, so to speak.
Well, at the end there, we were given a choice. We either surrender, turn our weapons in, and be handcuffed, fingerprint, picture taken, and be sent off to jail on the buses, or you could make a decision to escape into the night, which I did. I remember it was a couple days before the surrender, stand down. Stand down was Thursday, May 8th, 1973. So I think it was maybe 2 days before that, either Tuesday or Wednesday. Everyone was making plans to either surrender or escape. And, this guy comes up to our bunker, Little Bighorn bunker, and in there, Percy Casper, myself, John Carlson, Menominee Warrior Society. We're all in there, young men. The average age was probably 24, 25 years old, from these different reservations, from Wisconsin, from South Dakota, Minnesota. I myself was from Fort Defiance, Arizona, Navajo Reservation. And we were all making plans how we're going to escape. This guy comes up to our bunker, Henry Wawasik, a Potawatomi from Mayetta, Kansas.
That's my tribe. Prairie Band.
Yeah, he says, where's Lenny Foster? Is Lenny Foster in there? They said, yeah, he's in here. And I said, yeah, I'm right here. What do you want? He said, DJ wants you. DJ wants to see you.
DJ was Dennis Banks.
Dennis James Banks.
Yes.
I said, what did you want? What did you want to see me for? What did I do? So I said, yeah, I'm right here. What does he want me for? Just there, and he wants to talk to you right now. So I said, okay, I'll be back. I told those guys I'll be back. So I went out of the bunker. I went over to this log cabin building where they were at a ways. And then inside that log cabin, there's all these elders, these Indian women, who turned out to be Gladys Bisnet, Ellen Moo's camp. They were the ones that given directions to the men, to Dennis Banks, Leonard Crow, and Wallace Blackhawk. And they're all sitting around there. And DJ asked me, he said, Lenny, are you going to surrender? I said, no. Then he said, what are you going to do? I said, I'm going to escape out of here. I'm not going to surrender. And he says, good, because we're talking about, I need some young men to escort me out of here, and you're one of them. I want you to walk point for me. And I said, okay. Then Crow Dog was sitting right there, Blackhawk was sitting there, and the women were sitting over here. And their decision was to have the young men escort Dennis Banks out of here and escape into the night. So I agreed to do that. And before I left the building, he said, I told Crow Dog, I said, Crow Dog, can we have a sweat out ceremony, pray about this, and smoke the pipe so we can make our escape? He said, all right, we'll do that. So we did that afternoon. We gathered as soon as the sun went down, we started making plans. We got to get out of here. There was 5 of us. There was myself, there was Henry Owasik, Potawatomi, there was Percy Casper, a Shuswap from Canada. There was Frank Blackhorse, who was from Cleveland, Ohio. And Dennis Banks, Ojibwe, and co-founder of the American Indian Movement. So we single file. I was the lead at the point. And I led him out and went across the creek, down and across, up over that hill, single file. I said, no talking, just pay attention to what we're doing. Because when I know off to the sides, the government forces will be watching us. Their duty was to capture us, to make us surrender or engage in a firefight to kill Dennis Banks. And we knew that was their mission. Whereas our mission was to escape through the lines, use our medicine to escape where they won't see us. So we did that. 11 miles from Wounded Knee all the way to Porcupine, South Dakota. 11 miles over rough terrain, up and down those gullies and trenches and lots of trees, tree lines. We made it.
How long did it take you?
About 5-6 hours.
Wow.
It took us all night. Took us all night. We got close to, well, before we got completely away, it was maybe we were like 6 miles away from the community of Wounded Knee. There was a tree line. I decided to run ahead, make sure we didn't run into any ambush, or so I make sure that it was clear there was an owl sitting in this. I didn't realize what it was until I encountered it close. It was a big owl. Kind of scared me because I didn't know what it was. It was sitting there, just spread out his wings and hooting. And I turned around and I said, "Come on, let's go. We're clear." And the owl took off. It started going towards the east direction. And over in the east direction, that was the highway. We didn't know that. As we encountered that owl again, it was pitch black. It was dark. It was probably like 2-3 o'clock in the morning. This time, this owl was hooting, and it took off. And I said to her, "Auditions, and what do you want?" It hooted to me, and it flew off that way. And I said, "Oh, he wants me to follow him." So we started going that way. There was a highway. It was a paved highway. That was the highway from Pine Ridge to Wounded Knee, continued to Porcupine. It was a paved road, but there was no traffic. So I told DJ, "Let's just walk along the shoulder. It'd be easier for us instead of going up and down these gullies and rough terrain." He said, "Okay." He trusted me. As his point man, he trusted me. So we walked along the shoulder, and I said, "No talking," because he could hear. Voice carries a long ways. It's kind of like a valley, green valley, a lot of trees and different areas. We stayed near those tree line. Then we got about 2 miles from Porcupine. There was a flat area, and there was a car running way down. I said, "Let me go check on it, see who it is." So I went around this way by the tree line. I snuck up from behind. They didn't see me. And I could look in that car, and it was a Fed. It was 2 Feds sitting there. And they had their car running, so I ran back. I told DJ, "We got to go around. We can't go through here because of a couple Feds sitting down there in their car. We need to go all the way around. They can't see us." And we were able to do that. Black Horse was the last one. And Frank Black Horse turned out to be Italian, a runaway from Cleveland, Ohio. How he infiltrated the American Indian movement, we don't know. And he became part of our little group. And he was the one that ran across the highway, and they saw him. So they turned their lights on, and it left kind of a south direction. We continued, ran across the road. They didn't see us. We went around, we ran up this gully, told DJ, "Go on, just run. We're going to hold up the rear." And then that Fed car stopped. They had a dog with them. But right at the same moment, these two reservation dogs came out of nowhere. They basically came to our rescue. And, I know.
So those two reservation dogs.
The spirit sent them because we had a ceremony earlier that day. That afternoon, we smoked a pipe. We prayed about our escape. So the spirits sent the owl to warn us, and then they sent those two dogs to run interference for us. Those two dogs were from the community of Porcupine. Malnutrition. The feds had their one dog, but that was a big German Shepherd. But they had a leash on him. And they weren't going to let him go because they were going to get into a fight. But it allowed us seconds to escape.
So those two dogs interfered. And
they rescued us. We took off.
Well, how did you where did you end up?
We kept running. Then there was a house about a mile from where we were at. There was a house with a light on. Percy Catter ran over there, and he knew those people.
Okay.
Their name was John Attack him. They were powwow people. Percy was a powwow person. So he knew them, and he said, come on. We went in there. We stayed there all day. The feds came that morning. They were inquiring of that family if they'd seen anybody. They didn't know it was Dennis Banks. It was myself, Percy, Henry, Frank, and Dennis Banks was with us. So the sun went down that day. It was all day Thursday. We ate, and John said he's going to take us to Rosebud, about 70, 80 miles away. When it got dark, we got in his car. We took off on the back road, gravel road, dirt road. Went all the way, and then we finally got to the highway. From there, we got on a paved highway and went to.
So there were no feds with roadblocks or anything. It was just nothing.
Nothing. We were still in that prayer mode.
Yes.
We were still observing that pipe that we prayed with, the sweat lodge ceremony we had. We were burning cedar, sweet grass, still in that prayer mode. It took us. We got away. We got to Crow Dog's Paradise. It was a huge camp.
Mm-hmm.
There was probably 600-700 people camped. And we got away. We got there probably around 2-3 o'clock in the morning.
Wow.
We escaped. The next day we had coffee. We all went our separate ways. I shook hands and hugged Dennis Banks. He asked me, would I come with him to Canada? I said, no, I'm going to Arizona. I'm going back to Fort Defiance, Arizona. And I left with Teresa. She came, had her car. I jumped in. We took off. We drove to Denver, and that's Red Don's mother.
Mm-hmm.
But we were just a couple at that time. No kids, nothing, just two single young adults. So she took me all the way to Denver. I stayed at her place. And she let me use her car. I drove back to Fort Defiance.
So you never faced any...
I never was identified. I never was arrested.
Oh, okay.
I never was
indicted. Dennis Banks was ultimately. He was tried.
They identified him.
Yes.
Because he was the leader.
Yeah.
So they charged him. Russell Means. They went to trial. They beat it.
Yes.
But I never was charged with anything. Yeah, no idea. I was questioned on it once in Denver. Later that month, it was in June. The FBI came to where we were staying. They questioned me. But they had no evidence, no proof, nothing. So they couldn't indict me or charge me with anything. It scared me that they had come that close to identifying me.
Well, what does the ceremony look like coming up in the 27th to commemorate the 50th anniversary?
This one, from what I understand, they're going to have a big powwow to recognize all the Wounded Knee veterans. They're going to have a kind of like a panel discussion, speakers, tables like this. People speak on their experience, and then they're going to have a Four Directions March. That's Monday morning from Four Directions into Wounded Knee. Then they're going to have a feast and a powwow that evening. So they actually have a concert also in Rapid City, I believe, either Friday or Saturday night to recognize. So they have a number of events scheduled. And I talked to Bill Means, and he's the one that told me about it. You need to come and be one of the people recognize and speak. There are not too many of us still living.
Yeah.
I was 25 years old then, 50 years ago.
Yes. That's an incredible story, and thank you for sharing that history of Wounded Knee. I want to talk to you about Leonard Peltier. Now, you've been a spiritual leader, advisor for many, many years, and you visited him 37
I first met
years.
Leonard Peltier in Denver, Colorado, 1970, right there in the streets of Denver, Colorado. And he was asking where the AIM chapter was, where the AIM office was. I told him we were on Colfax Avenue. It was right down at the end of this block. There's an office upstairs. Blinded Loria had an office down the hall in the same building.
Wow.
And Vernon Balcourt, Rod Skinnendorf, Wallace Blackwell, they all had an office there we used to go to. So I told him about that, and that's why I met Leonard Peltier for the first time. And I kept running into him. I ran into him at Cass Lake, Minnesota in 1972 at a hunting and fishing rights experience there on that reservation. The white sportsmen from Minneapolis, St. Paul would come onto the reservation without any hunting license, fishing license, no permit to take fish or hunt. And the tribal leaders, Cass Lake, Leech Lake, that's where Dennis Banks was from. They wanted enforcement, compliance of hunting, fishing, rights. They wanted a permit to have the white sportsmen pay for a permit to do the hunt and fish. So that finally came as a result of the American Indian movement being called. We set up roadblocks. That was 1972. That again was another force of, or exhibit, demonstration of how the American Indian movement confronted the city and government, the state, to comply and enforce these rights that they had. AIM was the force behind that. And I saw that. Leonard Peltier was there. I was there. We had our med people. Henry Crodog, Leonard Crodog, Wallace Blackwell, Eddie Benton Diné. We had Dennis Banks, Russell Means, Vernon Balcourt, Bill Means, Ted Means, Carter Kemp, people like that. We were all there in force. And, another demonstration of sovereignty and unity, forcing the state, the county to comply with the request of the Indian tribal government to have that permit recognized, hunting, fishing rights recognized, that the Indian people wanted to be exercised on their land. But the government, the white people, they're not going to pay for no permit, hunting license or fishing. They want to do it free. It's not their land, but they want to do that. So we had a confrontation. We had our rifles, set up roadblocks. They couldn't come through. And the state backed down. So it was a victory for the Indian people. So it's these type of demonstrations that put aim on a national level, that the aim could exert sovereignty, the concept of sovereignty. And the community, whether it was Leech Lake Ojibways, or White Earth Ojibways, or Oglala Lakotas, or Rosebud, these different tribes, different groups who relied on the American Indian movement to be their.
Well, with Leonard being incarcerated, 47 years, do you think he'll ever get out?
Yeah, I think so. I do. I think he'll be released at the end of the term for Joe Biden's administration. I think perhaps Joe Biden might be a one-term president. If that happens, he'll release Leonard Peltier. That would be okay with us, but Leonard spent far too many years in prison. He spent over half of his life being locked up. Maybe the Great Spirit chose him to be that way, but a lot of his good years being locked up.
Now, Lenny, with all your history, being the warrior that you are, AIM warrior, AIM activist, whatever you want to describe, how would you describe yourself? Don't let me put words in your mouth.
Just Kiahane, born for Tsaklane, my Chase are Topahe, and Manali is Anavane, and Diné citizen. I exercise my sovereign rights granted by the Creator through the treaties of 1868 our people signed with the United States government. I'm just an ordinary citizen. I have a voice. I was a college student. I have 2 college degrees. I played college baseball, which was a good experience for me on a personal level.
Taught you discipline?
Well, it allowed me to compete with some of the best baseball played in this country.
If you appreciate what we do here at Native News Online, we invite you to donate to support our continued work covering Indian country. You can scan this code with your smartphone or go to the link located below this video to donate today. We greatly appreciate your support. Please be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel and follow us on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. And be sure to scan this code or go to the link below to subscribe to our newsletter. Thank you for joining us today, and please be sure to join us again next week for another episode of Native Bidaské. Chimigwech.